everyone doing out there? Welcome to a World Hole Media presentation of Major League A-Holes in the Hole and the miserable episode of Sox Tap Thing. I'm Pete.
I'm Ryan. You are in the hole with Major League A-Holes on a thirsty Thursday. I'm drinking another Surly Furious IPA. Sounds like you had a post-work like happy hour.
Yeah, I'm trying to make sure I can be coherent during the podcast. So I'm coming down off about the 12 ounces of rye I've had so far this afternoon, with just some pure leaf iced tea for my thirsty Thursday, because I already started it a while ago.
We'll see how that goes. We're having some weird technical issues too, so this might sound awful. We might scrap the whole fucking thing, but it's an interesting thirsty Thursday. It is rivalry week as the Cubs played the Sox. The Giants played the A's. The Tigers played the Giants. The Cubs are playing the Cardinals again tonight. It's also sweeps week as the Tigers were just swept today by the Angels.
Their biggest rival.
Cubs, the Cubs swept the White Sox. And the Tigers swept the Giants in a really odd way. But really what's going on is the trade deadline. And there's already been a massive trade within the 5 teams that we cover. So we'll discuss that along with the trades that may or may not happen for each of our teams. Of course, we have Badass of the Week. And we've got a dumbass injury of the week. It's been a while since we've done one of those. So that'll be fun to wrap up the show with. So I guess with that, we might as well go ahead and jump into the news.
Well, thanks to a trade, we're going to, on a very, very rare moment here, and this will be the last time we probably do it. Well, I don't know, maybe because the trade's not, but we're leading with the White Sox, not because of record, like we normally do on this podcast, but because they are the first team to pull off a trade where they sent Lucas Giolito and Ronaldo Lopez to the Angels for their number 2 and 3 prospect. That includes number 67 rated, top 100 rated catcher Edgar Cuero and left-handed pitcher Kai Bush, who I had to laugh.
NASCAR driver?
Yeah. Well, I had to laugh when I heard that his start to the season in AA this year was delayed by injury. I'm like, what a perfect fit. Why don't we get this guy? But
so I'm already wondering if you feel like this trade is as good as the trade where you received Lucas Giolito and Ronaldo Lopez from the Nationals for Adam Eaton.
So what I will say is I'm equally as surprised, right? I thought we got a lot for Adam Eaton.
You did.
And I kind of believe Gio's one thing, but Ronaldo Lopez has not been good this year. In fact, he really hasn't been good since like maybe early August of last season, if you really look at the numbers. And we got their number 2 and 3 prospects. Now, do the 2 and 3 prospects in the Angels organization equal the 2 and 3 prospects if we had traded with the Dodgers? I don't know at the end of the day.
I saw the latest, or at least one set of rankings had the Angels system lower than the White Sox system right now. So it's all relative, but still I mean, of course, who knows how this is going to pan out, but I think it looks pretty good on the surface for sure. You need a catcher. You need a catcher of the future for sure. So.
Yeah. And he's a switch hitter. Maybe he's the next Adley Rutschman. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. But the good news is I did read an article on the way home today from The Athletic that gave the Angels a B- on the trade and the Sox an A-. So, you know, the guys who get paid to do this like what the Sox did on the trade. Again, I'm with you. Like, I mean, at least if their organization is ranked, their minor league system is ranked lower than the White Sox, at least they got something in the top 3, two of the top 3. But yeah, exactly. So you never know.
What's the deal with with Lopez and Giolito being like attached to the hip in every trade?
Okay. So that's the other thing. 2/3 of that trade, no one even knows what the last third of the trade. There were 3 players in the Washington deal, and
Oh yeah.
Oh no, the third one was Dane Dunning, who's with
It was Dane
Texas
Dunning,
now.
yeah.
Which
And you got Lance Lynn.
Yeah, which will be essentially the whole side of that Washington trade will be most likely traded. We'll get to Lance Lynn in a few here, but
yeah.
That being said, like, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of funny. They were kind of like linked together in that trade too, originally when it was talked about, because they both had such high ceilings, but were kind of underperforming for the Nationals, which is why, even though they were ranked high in their organization, they had brought up Lopez late in that season, and I think maybe Giolito too, and they just didn't perform up to expectations. And then with the way both of them kind of started for the White Sox, it looked like, like, hey, even though it was just Adam Eaton, Washington, I think they got a championship out of that, got the better end of that deal for sure. But while the White Sox didn't get a championship out of it, they got a lot of good innings, which is why we're talking about this today.
Got a no-hitter.
Yeah, got a no-hitter. Whoopee. A couple playoff appearances for not. But the White Sox have failed. The window is closed, and we'll get to the final. We're kind of just talking about part 3 now. It's like live. It's happening. But, it's a huge disappointment as a White Sox fan. I feel like even if they had done well this year, but, depending on how the playoffs went for them, any sort of early exit, anything short of making it to the World Series would still have been a disappointment for me, because, it's kind of like,
that was the whole point of going through this.
It's a bag of beans. It's like the bag of magic beans right now. And you don't know when you get these prospects, even though it looks like the Sox were hitting on all cylinders and this is going to be like a great team. Like, you don't know about the prospects, but, I think it goes back to a lot of what you said last week, Smitty. It's not so much that the White Sox completely missed on the prospects. They did nothing to supplement fully, like not as soon as they should have. And then their attempts at adding premier talent always seemed like, well, we're going to make this offer just so we can be in the conversation, so we can look to the fan base like we tried.
It's like they didn't fully commit to the full rebuild plan. They did 80% of it and didn't push it over the top.
Yeah, they thought somehow they were going to do what the Cubs did without adding the veteran talent that the Cubs added to push them over the top for a 2016 championship.
John Lester is the big difference. You didn't say who is your John Lester of this White Sox window. It never happened.
We had John Danks at one point.
That's true. but to Giolito, have you ever heard why they never really ever considered like signing him long term? Why it just never even came up. It was just a foregone conclusion that his contract was going to expire and he'd move on, or whether they traded him in a position to trade him at the deadline or not. This was going to be his last year, and I guess I don't understand that. Why is there a bad relationship there, or what? What do you have any insight in that, or are you as confused as I am about it?
Yeah, I'm a little confused by it. Part of me believes they knew they were selling. They knew what they were selling to us this season, and they made no significant off-season improvements, like major buys. And I mean, honestly, he has been one of the bright spots though, really, this year, which is sad, and doesn't mean a lot either. But they never, they're never in the conversation for the Aaron Judge type player. They won't be in the conversation for Ohtani next season. so it's like, yeah, we'll get to that. But like, I think if somehow they were competitive, I think it's maybe instead of adding a player, they would have done one of their famous sign Giolito to a multi-year deal at the trade deadline and added modestly. That's one of their famous moves. But until new ownership comes in, I'm mirrored in mediocrity. I mean,
yeah,
I think Rick Hahn and Kenny need to go, but at the same time, I see Rick Hahn seems like a really smart dude. Like, again, he made all the right moves for the trades because that didn't involve money. But when he wanted or needed to spend, I'm not giving him a pass on this whole thing, but who knows? We'll never know how much it was like, no, you can't go after that guy. I'm not going to spend that money because history shows they are not going to spend that money. When Andrew Benintendi is your biggest contract in a major market, it's a fucking joke. One thing we all know, unfortunately, for the excitement of this trade deadline, that the trade of Gio and Ronaldo Lopez to the Angels signified there's no Ohtani trade sweepstakes anymore.
Yeah. They announced about 8:00 last night that Ohtani was no longer on the market. That was breaking news. I think Tom Verducci broke that on Twitter. And about 4 hours later, Giolito was traded to the Angels. So it's like, well, I guess that's the end of that. I think most of the world is kind of dumbfounded by that. Almost a week before the actual trade deadline, they pull him off the trade block where, that could have been the most lucrative trade commodity in the history of baseball.
Oh yeah.
He's decided, fuck it, we're going for it. There's lots of speculation there. They're definitely going for it. They're all in now. I almost think Rick Hahn maybe took advantage of that.
I agree.
As clearly the Angels are desperate now. They showed their hand. They are going for it. And then, they have to add to that roster somehow, and they definitely need starting pitching. It's always been their Achilles heel. So, bravo to Rick Hahn for totally exploiting that situation. I think, as we said, I think the return looks pretty good at this point. So, the only thing I can think of from the Angels side of it is for them to suddenly pull them off the trade market and be the first to make a big splash and make this move with Giolito. They must have gotten some assurances or something changed with their conversations with the Ohtani camp. Like I think they may have learned for the first time that he is willing to be there long term after this season. He's willing to sign a long-term deal with that, which didn't sound like that was necessarily an option before, but maybe I just don't see how they could make this decision so abruptly and go all in without having some kind of assurance that it's not just going to be for this season alone.
I have another theory, which I texted you earlier. Recently, owner of the Angels, Moreno, has commented about how he despises the Dodgers, how if they trade Ohtani, he wouldn't even consider a trade from the Dodgers, which is hilarious because they have a ton of great prospects. But all that aside, now, I don't know. I agree with you. Probably most likely they did get some assurances. Like Ohtani's like, if you give me the money, I'm staying, right? Sort of thing. But I also believe like every major pundit was saying that Giolito was on the Dodgers target list. And
yeah.
And there, I think he's tired of being that second team in that city, in that market, and wants to try to like turn that around I could see a guy with an ego like he has doing something like that.
Yeah, I think that's that argument's supported by the $400+ million he signed Mike Trout to, and of course getting Ohtani in the first place. And now, going all in again. I think that's very plausible. He's got an inferiority complex to the Dodgers, and just has to do everything he can to try to wrest that spotlight away.
Yeah, and this move I read put them over the luxury tax. Not that for billionaires.
Adding Giolito?
Yeah, adding Giolito and Lopez put them over the luxury tax. So
I didn't even think about that. That's interesting.
That's the first time in their history they've been over the luxury tax. So
Something tells me he'll be okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not crying for him by any means, but it's interesting, and I think he is. I think it's like, let's start to wrestle away, or attempt to wrestle away some of that share and get the spotlight. So
the other mitigating factor is he was like on the verge of selling the team a couple months ago, I feel like.
Right. So you're right. We talked about that.
Something radical has shifted in the mind of Artie Moreno. So I guess we'll see how that pans out. I fear that once again, if this all comes to fruition, that Ohtani does sign with the Angels, I fear that they will continue to flounder.
Yeah, because they'll fill the seats anyway.
Yeah, so they've had the two best players in baseball for all this time and haven't made the playoffs. It's just, again, I call it a baseball tragedy that both those players are mired in that market in a team that chronically underachieves. They're still 4 games back and behind, in third place behind the Astros, who are the first or second wild card, and they're both trailing the Rangers still. So they've got a tough schedule coming up too. So
yeah, they do.
While we're talking about Ohtani, I mean, he just single-handedly dispatched with the Tigers today in a doubleheader. First game, he pitched a complete game shutout, 1 hitter, 8 strikeouts. Second game, he just hits 2 home runs, 3 RBI. It's unreal. The disturbing thing is, in game 1, mere hours after we learned that they're going all in on this season, Shohei he was kind of late and lazy covering first on a ground out, and had a minor looking collision with Kerry Carpenter, and he dropped the ball and was flexing his arm, and it's like, what did he just hurt himself? Like, what the hell just happened? Then in the second game, after his second home run, as he's rounding the bases, he grabbed his lower back and side several times as he was rounding the bases, and was pulled from the game. So it's like, did they just go all in only to have the premier piece that they are wagering on? I mean, is he going to have? I mean, you're always worried about injury issues, but less than 24 hours, you see two minor incidents that had to make Artie Moreno throw open his mouth a little bit.
Oh, well. That was his first career shutout, too.
Complete game shutout?
Yeah.
Congrats to him.
Congrats
Came against my fucking Tigers.
Well, before we move over to another team, let's complete the misery. And, let's have some more fun. Let's talk about our favorite buddy, Bob Nightingale, who is red hot on the fact that Lance Lynn is being traded to the Tampa Bay Rays. Names have already been exchanged. Oddly enough, he did not seem to have this Giolito Lopez trade at all on the radar, but he's all hot that Lance Lynn is being traded to the Rays. And I believe you had shared to the Sox Type Thing Twitter feed that he has guaranteed that the next piece that moves is Lance Lynn, right? That's the next White Sox trade.
It would seem to make sense, but I don't really take anything that Bob Nightingale says as gospel. So for myriad reasons.
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious that a trade occurred before this rumored Lance Lynn trade from him, because again, he talked nothing about Giolito going to the Angels or the Angels having any interest in him at all. So
I think they were, I mean, whatever source that Nightingale has with his White Sox was just trying to throw him off the scent of the real what's going on by
exactly
putting all that Lance Lynn shit out there. So just tricky stuff going on between your White Sox and Bob Nightingale at all times. By the way,
So
I did see Eduardo Escobar today in an Angels uniform all afternoon in Detroit.
What?
Yeah, I thought he was going to be a White Sox. I mean,
I'm shocked he wasn't part of the trade. How's he not part of that trade?
Yeah, exactly. That would have been a really good trade. There's your second baseman finally.
Oh, that would have been hilarious. Although Jake's played second the last few nights. That's gone all right. He turned an incredible double play. Didn't even understand how he did it. Didn't even step into it, just threw it with his arm. So
he had a ball go right off the heel of his glove.
Well, I mean,
rather embarrassing too. So
it was
I'm not sure he's a second baseman.
It's a 104 mile an hour line drive. I mean, misjudging.
Not the play I'm talking about, but maybe that's
I was talking about that liner that he jumped up for, had a leap for. That's what you're talking about.
Well, I think you're referring to the Cubs White Sox series. If we wanted to move over to that, or did you have other things you wanted to talk about before?
No, I don't think there's anything I was just gonna say, like, my part 3 of the window has closed is I don't think anyone wants any of the position players, so it's really not worth talking about.
Well, I mean, it's worth talking about why. I mean, Yohan Moncada is due $25 million next year because of the bloated contract that Rickon gave him early in his career. He's untradeable, even if he had been healthy. Tim Anderson, you don't think is going to go anywhere? I mean, I know he's at a lower point in his value. He's been playing better of late the last couple weeks.
Yeah, he sure has. I think he's only not hit safely in like one game over the last 10 days, but I don't think so. I actually don't see them wanting to move him, and I think that's part of the reason that I think the Dodgers probably were interested in him, but I think that's why they went out and got I can't remember who it was, someone from the Guardians, was it, or something like that?
I missed that.
The Dodgers signed a shortstop, so from the Guardians. I can't remember who the guy's name, but so I don't know. I just don't see it happening.
Oh, is that the Jose Lopez? No, it's not. That's Twins. I don't know. We probably should have done more research and less drinking before this episode.
Well, if I had done less drinking, I would have had the name, but Ahmed Rosario.
That's right. That's
they traded Noah Syndergaard. So
that's such a weird trade. I don't want to begin to try to break that down. I can't figure.
I'll break it down in that the Guardians think Noah Syndergaard can get them over the top in the shitty AL Central
with his 7 ERA or whatever it is.
Yeah. It's good enough. But yeah,
I'd be shocked though. So you're saying that Giolito's going to be the only player they're trading other than possibly Lance Lynn?
Oh no, and then all the relief pitchers. But we talked about that last week. I'm saying I don't think. I mean, maybe someone wants a veteran presence of. I don't know. Is Yasmani Grandal worth something to someone? I mean, he calls a good game and is a good framer, but would he be better throwing out people at second if his pitchers actually held anyone fucking on? I don't know. Like, you can blame Grandal for the 5 stolen bases in the Cubs series as we're leaning into that series, transitioning into that series, but Kopech doesn't do a sidestep when there's someone on. He does his same big old ass slow motion. I mean, I'm not sure Johnny Bench could fucking throw someone out with that. I mean, it's a combination. So he's a great framer. Someone might want him if they need a veteran, like catcher presence. Maybe Elvis Andrus. again, you're not going to get anything good, but
Yeah.
at least we get something. You know, might be something, some trade that turns into something, but maybe it's for the best player ever, cash considerations. Who knows? But you know, outside of that, you're not trading Vaughn. You're not trading Berger. Maybe does someone want Gavin Sheets? I could see them moving Gavin Sheets. They don't have really any room for him. Your next best tradable, because he's been fairly healthy this year, would be Eloy Jiménez. I could see someone. I mean, he has been, his numbers overall, the home runs are lacking a little bit, but his overall numbers, I think he's a candidate for badass of the week, although it's not a like blow you away week. But he's when he's been on the field, he has been performing at a high rate offensively. So I think he had 4 RBIs last night. But I don't know. It's pretty slim pickings from a position player standpoint. And you know, they're not, like I said, they're not trading Vaughn. They're not going to trade Lewis Robert. That's who they're, you know, planning to build around. And then we got the famous it was like hearing the Cubs again. We're not rebuilding, you know, we believe we can compete again next year, was out of Rick Hahn's mouth. Yeah, and I'm just like
2024. Yeah.
I'm like, really? Why?
Well, that might be why you would hold on to Tim Anderson for his final year.
Yeah.
So you're not scrambling for a shortstop there, hoping he has a rebound year of sorts. Yeah. I mean, we're starting to transition into the Cubs series. We might as well bring up game 2. Maybe we'll work backwards into from last night's game. I sent you a text message. I actually stole that headline from Ken Rosenthal, who called it the worst trade deadline showcase.
Oh yeah, I got that here.
If you could pull up the stats from the principals involved in the Cubs' 10-7 comeback victory last night.
Yeah, we'll go in order of appearance in game and exiting. First to exit, we'll go in exit order.
Just go.
Marcus Stroman, 3 1/3, 9 hits, 7 earned runs, an 8 ERA in his last 6 starts.
Yeah, I'm going to bring that up in a bit, but yeah, that was kind of an extra note there. He's imploded.
Lance Lynn, who looked like he was in the driver's seat going into the follow-up inning as the Sox took to a 7-2 lead, 4 2/3, 7 hits, 7 earned runs. A lot thanks to Joe Kelly, who only gets credited with 1 earned run, but has no innings pitched, 2 walks, 1 hit by a pitch, and what I'd like to call a questionable wild pitch. I think it's a pass ball. You know what you knew what you called. You know he's going to try to bury it. That's on the catcher, but whatever.
That led to an RBI.
Yeah, that's why I was texting it.
Is that an RBI even?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you get the batter to swing at it and strike out, is it really a wild pitch?
Yeah,
it seems weird. Seems like a pass ball to me, but call me crazy. And then someone we did all these names we talked about over the last week, Kenyon Middleton, 1 inning pitch, 2 hits, and 2 solo home runs to be exact, right?
Yeah, he was kind of a rising name on your to be traded list.
It was Ian Happ followed by
Bellinger.
Yeah, followed by Bellinger's bomb. I mean, that was destroyed.
They call them belly bombs.
But then, you know, he settled back in and pitched well. But you know, they did show both nights. There were a ton of scouts in the seats on the White Sox broadcast. They showed like scouts all over the place. Also,
in the scout seats.
Yeah, we should note that I wanted to note that yesterday's game, there was a foul ball behind home plate that was to the first base side of the scout seats, bounced, and pretty much landed in a dude's hands in the seats we were in, which was
no
fucking
way.
hilarious. I was dying.
We didn't get anything that came our way that game.
No. Then he gave the ball to a kid, which was nice. So
I wouldn't do that. I've never caught a foul ball in my life. I'd have to keep it.
yeah, I'd keep it.
Then I'd be the bad guy.
Well, you are a bad guy. So, I mean.
Yeah, I have called this podcast the Major League A-holes for a reason.
Yeah, so the Sox.
Go ahead.
I would call the cut. I just want to say one thing, and then sorry, I apologize. It's part of this.
Oh,
we're on a delay, folks.
Yeah, this is awful. Sorry,
it's been really difficult at times right now, but yes. we'll get through it. I'm trying to watch Smitty's mouth move before I react.
Don't watch my mouth. Just don't.
So, I will say that I feel like the entire Sox season was showcased in these two games. Like if no Cub fan had watched White Sox baseball to these two games, you got to see everything that has led to their record this year. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, but I mean, the relief pitching implosion, starting pitching that, gets off to a nice start and then finally implodes. Game 1 featured 4 home runs by the Cubs and 5 stolen bases. As you mentioned, the battery of Grandal and Kopech couldn't hold a single runner on. Cubs have never done that in their franchise history. Close to 150 years of Cubs history, they've never hit 4 home runs and stolen 5 bases in one game. So, thank you for that.
I heard that during the game since at least credited since 1901 is what the exact stat was. They said maybe prior to 1901 it happened, but we'll never know.
Sure. Yeah. Well, last episode, you asked me what the Cubs had to do to not be sellers at the deadline, and I said they needed to play 700 ball. I don't know if you recall me saying.
I do recall
700 ball.
I do recall your fool's gold reasons for them to not be sellers.
Lo and behold, they've won 7 out of the last 10 games. In fact, they've won 7 out of their last 8 games. So they've done what I've asked. They're now 1 game below 500. They're still some games back in the division and wild card.
A lot of stiff competition there.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We're already seeing Cincinnati fade a bit. Cubs are playing Cincinnati next week, I believe. So that's gonna just after the deadline, of course. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I mean, as we talked about, Stroman would be probably their primary trade asset to move at the deadline. And really, since that fucking London series, he's been a disaster. His last 6 starts, he's got an 8 ERA. He gave up 7 earned runs last night. I haven't seen that his velocity is necessarily down, but there's something that's clearly not right with him. Is he running out of gas? I don't know, but his trade value has plummeted. So maybe, if he had been pitching better down this stretch, maybe the Cubs would be more motivated to trade him because they'd be able to get more for him. But I think they're less motivated at this point. He might be less motivated to waive his actually opt out of his deal and just would come back for the money he's owed next year. I think that's one reason they're definitely not going to sell him at this point. This is our last podcast before the trade deadline and for a few weeks afterwards. So got to put my final decisions in on this. So I'm going to say they're not trading Marcus Stroman. I also think they're not going to trade Cody Bellinger. And I think they're really going to hope to sign him long term, whether it's before the end of the season or in the off season. He's exactly what they need. He's proven to be the left-handed power bat that they've been lacking, and he is producing for sure, including last night. He's perfect for him, and he's struggled over the last few years, and somehow the Cubs have unlocked whatever the issue was with him.
Right.
I heard a stat with his hard hit ball rate is lower than it was in previous years, but his average is higher and everything else is higher. So I think he might be sacrificing his, all out crazy swings for maybe a, commonly referred to as a B hack, just not going all out, being more precise with his swings and getting actually better results out of it. So whatever it is, the results are on the field and palpable. So that's another reason I think they're not going to be selling. Third reason that the Cubs will not be selling at this deadline is a little bit of marquee network drama. I don't know if you heard this, but a few weeks ago,
subscription.
The Cubs a few weeks ago, I told you the Cubs would be releasing a direct-to-consumer version of the Marquee Network app, where in-market Cubs fans can actually watch their team on their phones, on their iPads, on their whatever streaming device they have for the first time ever without a cable subscription. So they have now untethered watching the Cubs with any cable company for the first time. So what was also interesting about that is I think I was speculating it would come in about $25 a month based on what the Yankees and Red Sox have done. It comes in at $20 a month. So while that's still pretty high, it is not on the high end of what I thought it would be. So I think putting myself back in Chicago, if I was living there, I wouldn't have a problem with $20. I'd be happier with 15, but $20 a month for Marquee Network, I think I would be happy to not have a cable subscription and pay that to watch the Cubs in market. That's the same as what the Tigers actually have with the Bally Sports app, Bally Sports Detroit. That also includes Red Wings and Pistons games, of course. But so the price point at least isn't as outrageous as I thought. But that being released this week, I thought was really curious timing because all of a sudden they are going to be doing everything they can to get subscribers to that. And if you trade away your best players that week into that effort, it doesn't really make good business sense. So that's yet another reason why I think that the Cubs will not be sellers at the deadline. And I'm wondering if you notice how I've carefully worded that. And I'm not saying that they're going to be buyers necessarily or big buyers. I think they're just going to not sell away those guys. I think they're going to hold on to, the top end of their farm system for sure. Not trying to trade for some big name starter or relief pitchers. I think they might make some small moves, add some bullpen depth, potentially a fourth or fifth starter. I don't think they'll be doing that. They need more offense more than anything. So we'll see what they do. Maybe hopefully they can find something at third or first base. Which is difficult to do, of course, but those are their needs. I think the smaller needs that they might fill. You've rolled your eyes at my idea that they wouldn't be sellers, but I'm also want to make sure you understand that I'm not saying that they're going to be big buyers either. I think they're kind of going to be more in the middle of the road for all the reasons I put forth. So I don't know. You're gonna say I'm full of shit, or what do you got over there?
Oh no, I think the way you laid it out, protecting your theories by, the Cubs aren't going to do it because of the Marquee Network and this and that is fine. I don't think they should though. I think they're idiots for not. They are 13 games below 500 against teams with winning records. So if they keep the team, if they don't add majorly and keep the team as it is today, that means if they make the playoffs, they're a first round exit. Also, if they don't go after it and add, now again, if they don't do anything and do modestly and at least keep the team in place, they are aiding themselves in getting a lot of Marquee Network subscriptions. So I agree with you 100% on that. But they are also doing a disservice to everyone who's a fan because
of what they could get back for Stroman and Bellinger.
Yeah. And also for the fact that if you don't go in and really add, everyone else ahead of you is going to do that. They are going to make major moves. The guys you have to leave to get to the wild card or to your division are going to be adding. You're not the only team who's out there. And they obviously based on their record right now, do not have enough to do it.
Well, I'm going to dispute that because we've seen firsthand that the Brewers don't do that. They actually traded away Josh Hader last year at this point. So they found ways to compete while trading away assets. So I'm not sure that's a foregone conclusion. So,
and what did they do in the playoffs?
Well, sure, but so the opportunity.
It's a disservice.
I get your point.
Disservice what the Brewers did was a disservice to the fans.
Well, yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. But what I was trying to get you to talk about is the opportunity cost of not trading Stroman and Bellinger. Like, what do you think they're missing out on if they don't trade Stroman at this point? Do you think the Cubs could get the same return that you just got for Giolito?
Maybe. They're looking at the collective work, and there's going to be a team there. Obviously, the Angels think can do something with Ronaldo Lopez. Like they see something, they talk to the pitching coach. The Sox have done it a ton of freaking times with Don Cooper. I watched Stroman though last night. Like he's just not throwing a lot of strikes. That's what his problem is right now. And he was lucky that was one of the worst plate umpires for both guys and for every hitter. Every hitter was screwed last night because it was the most inconsistent strike zone. But watching Jimenez, which
scored 17 runs somehow, but
this is not how the White Sox lost. But watching Jimenez get called out on a ball 2 inches off the plate below his knees is terrible. But watching Stroman last night, like the Sox, started to adjust and he doesn't have an overpowering fastball. So that's actually in their wheelhouse for scoring a lot of runs. So that's why they scored a lot of runs last night. But he also he didn't have the pinpoint control when I watched him earlier this season a couple times, which he could easily get back in like a freaking week and be fine. But it's just
hasn't
shitty
happened
going into the trade deadline.
For 6 starts. It's not just one bad start. That's the problem. And that's what every GM is going to use against Jed Hoyer in any kind of negotiation. So,
well, I think
you're overestimating what the disservice that they're giving Cubs fans.
Well, they're doing a disservice for not trading Cody Bellinger. Then I think we can all agree on that because there's a return.
I don't, because I think they want to sign him long term. I think he is their future, and when you trade him away, you hurt potential to sign him long term. So.
You think they're already going to work out? Because the deal's not going to happen mid-season because Boris doesn't do that. His agent is Scott Boris, so they're going to have to wait until the off season to do it.
Boris does whatever his clients tell him to do, and he says that. So if Bellinger wants to be there, he will be there, and he's shown no signs that he doesn't want to be there. I'm not in his head. I don't know that, but to put it on Boris is not accurate.
Well, it is somewhat accurate because he's going to consult his client and he's going to tell him it's in your best. It's for the best for you to wait until the off season.
That's what he did last year, and he signed with the Cubs. So I think you and I are just going to disagree fundamentally on that. But I mean,
enjoy not making the playoffs by not adding anything. I think if you don't trade in these guys, you have to do some sort of major addition. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying you got to go one way. You got to go all in, or then trade the guys.
I don't believe that. And you and I've on this podcast, the history of this podcast, you see things as black and white. I see things as shades of gray, and that's why I'm halfway in the middle. I know it drives you crazy. You drive me crazy with that too. So that's probably why we enjoyed this podcast. But I think this is another example of how we just view things differently. So I think we can just agree to disagree on that point.
13 games under 500 about teams with winning records. Enjoy it, Smitty.
Yeah, and you didn't have any issues with that every time I brought it up about the White Sox for the last 2 years, but it didn't stop you from going gung-ho into the ether. So I don't know.
Well,
it's just
not at
interesting
the trade deadline.
Those.
Not at the
Absolutely,
trade deadline.
it was at the trade deadline. Yes. I mean, if you want to look at the old podcast, go ahead. But I think we could just move on from this because we're not going to agree.
I think
that's all I've got for the Cubs, unless you want to talk more about the Cubs Sox series.
No, why would I want to talk more about
that? Why don't we just completely change subjects and go over to your San Francisco Giants?
Oh, wow. Well, I don't believe in jinxes, but let's be honest, folks. I proclaimed the Giants were good last week. I was finally over my wishy-washy feeling about them, and they went on a losing streak right after I made that proclamation.
They got swept by the Nationals?
They got swept by the Nationals and then went in for a makeup game against the Tigers, and the Tigers just whipped them around.
We'll get to that in a bit, but yeah, Tigers struck out 15 batters in that one game between Kubel and the relief pitchers.
But then all was set right because they had their Battle of the Bay series, and they got to play the Oakland A's, and that made everything better.
A AAA team tends to do that.
Yeah, they won the last 2 games. Part of the excitement around yesterday's game wasn't that it was the so-called Battle of the Bay, but it was they called up their number two prospect, Marco Luciano.
Marco Luciano.
The 15th overall rated prospect in the MLB pipeline. To give the middle infield, which needs some relief. You've got the aging Brandon Crawford out with a knee inflammation, not surprising. And the red hot Thairo Estrada with a left hand fracture. Fractures are big this year with the Giants, as Mitch Haniger just got cleared to resume baseball activities from his right arm fracture. So fractures are the injury du jour for the Giants this season. But while he went 0 for 2, that included a 340-foot flyout. He did turn 2 double plays, and very excited to be there. Said all the right things. Looked good in the infield, and good defense helps you win games. And they definitely finally had the offense come back to life yesterday in Oakland. A few home runs, including J.D. Davis, and it was nice to see. I don't know. I feel like they had their little hiccup. Hopefully, again, dealing with injuries that they've dealt with on and off this year, and I think every team feels it. I think actually maybe the Cubs will be fine, because maybe when you look at the numbers, I'm going to go back to injuries. You look at the numbers, I think overall, and I don't know what good teams they played in that span, but I feel like when they've had that team assembled, they have played well. When Cody Bellinger was out of the lineup and a few other things, they hadn't played well. So I don't know, maybe it is gray like Smitty says, or like the paint on the house I'm looking at through the window here. I think the Giants are going to be in it. I think they're going to make the playoffs. I'm not worried about the Cubs taking a wild card spot from them. So,
that would be delicious.
But they're gonna make some trades. One of the possible trade candidates was Lucas Giolito.
That's what I thought.
He did not go there. He did not make my dreams come true of just getting to watch him in my other team's uniform. And of course, Ohtani was strongly rumored. So the Angels broke they crushed all my Giants dreams.
No Ohtani for you.
Yeah, in 4 hours last night, the Giants trade dreams were crushed there.
That's why you hate Artie Moreno so much.
Artie fucking Moreno. I hate his name. His name sounds like he's a clown or something. He's he's a clown. He sounds like a fucking clown. Hey, I'm Artie Moreno. Squeeze my flower. Hey, Artie Moreno.
Okay. All right.
What? You don't like that?
Are you sure you don't have more bourbon in that?
No, I swear. I don't have any iced tea left either. But the Giants are going to definitely have to make some additions. And Smitty was so kind as to send me this fine article that I forgot to pull up for this podcast tonight. But someone brilliantly, like some of the things we had talked about last week, a columnist out in San Francisco kind of mapped out like all of the possible trades the Giants could be making. And Smitty did point out earlier that are you sure the Sox are going to trade Tim Anderson? And because they need shortstop help, Tim Anderson was one of the names on that list to possibly go to San Francisco. I think the Giants are sort of playing a game right now. It doesn't hurt anything to bring up Luciano. It was the first time since 1982 that they had two players under 21 years of age or under 22 years of age in the lineup at the same time, which is kind of interesting when you think about that. I feel like there's certain teams like that's like always happening, like the Marlins, for example. But these are both high school signings.
Yeah, I wonder if bringing up your hot shortstop prospect is just maybe a leverage ploy in the negotiations. Like, oh, we've got this covered, but if you want to give us Tim Anderson, we'll give you something. But
are you reading my mind? Because that's exactly where I was going. I feel like they want a veteran shortstop presence, but they're kind of like, let's bring him up. Let's be like, well, we don't really need him that badly. So how about you take our number 99th prospect? Or you know what I mean? Like just let's we, you know, like what you were saying, Rick Hahn probably took advantage a little bit of the Angels because of their all in, and it was why it's been noted that Moreno is trying to, you know, steal thunder away from the Dodgers. So maybe he used that against them and was able to get something a little bit better than, you know, what we all imagined would have returned. So the Giants could be using some reverse logic there. I could see the Giants talking to the White Sox about Lance Lynn, though, too. They could use like a veteran pitching presence out there. They have the spacious ballpark that might play well for Lynn. Yeah. I did see an interesting stat. Do you know no right-handed hitter has ever had a splash home run there?
I think we talked about that, yeah, when we had our splash hits.
Oh, did we talk that a righty had never done it? That a righty had never done it? Like I don't remember that, but like it'd be
a tough Oppo home run.
Yeah, it's made it into the water, but it's never done it like
it bounced in?
Yeah, bounced in. Okay. Never on a fly. So I thought that was an interesting stat that I read. But I found this. Okay, good. You can edit some of this out, obviously.
I'll keep going. Fuck it.
All right. So it's interesting that it's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon here on this podcast for Giants trade candidates.
Bacon?
Bacon, according to the Giants beat. Number 1 on the list was Ohtani. We can scratch that off. I'm not scratching number 2 off, even though Smitty is, because it's a gray area. But Marcus Stroman was listed as the number 2 target for the Giants. Number 3,
we'll take your number 1 and 2 prospects.
Number 3 was Lucas Giolito. He gone. Number 4, Jordan Montgomery from the Cardinals. I think that's a legitimate possibility. Cardinals are going to be major sellers. They have some decent players there. You wonder if they're going to move an Arenado or a Goldschmidt, although probably not. They probably keep them to keep people in the stands. But
by the way, the Cardinals are getting their ass kicked again by the Cubs 4-0 right now.
There you go. So Eduardo Rodriguez of the Tigers is on their list at number 5. It's a very incestual trading pattern this year for the Major League A-holes, and it makes sense. The Giants are the only winning team. on this
amongst
podcast.
us.
Yes, the Cubs can get to 500 with a win over the Cardinals tonight. Paul DeYoung, candidate at shortstop. I mentioned Tim Anderson. So it's funny that most of the trade targets, according to the Giants beat, are all coming from the Central, whether it be NL or AL.
I missed it. Did we credit the author of this article?
Oh, I did not credit her. I apologize. I do.
Feel like we should, since we just ripped off her article completely.
No Caprende. No Spreckens die Deutsch. Doing my best, Sammy Sosa. I'm doing my best, Sammy Sosa here.
This is devolving into madness.
Maria Guardado.
Okay.
Thank you, Maria.
From what?
The Giants beat
NBC
the Giants
Sports.
beat on MLB.com.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Woo, that was tough.
Jesus. Is that it for your Giants, or are we?
Yeah,
we
thank God.
Off there? What's
thank
going
God.
on?
I'll just stop talking for a minute here.
Well, your Giants did make a stop in Detroit this week to finish a suspended series from much earlier in the season, where the third game was unable to be played due to inclement weather. The Tigers were able to come away with a victory and thus a very odd sweep of the Giants. Lasted about 3 months. Like I said, Turk Skubal on his way back from injury, looking solid again. Can't go very deep into games, which is frustrating for me because he's on my fantasy team and I'm not getting quality starts out of him soon enough. But as I mentioned earlier, Skubal and the relief staff combined for 15 strikeouts. Your Giants. So that was a little bit of a happy moment in a otherwise really mediocre week for the Tigers. They started out this past weekend series at home against the Padres, who we've kind of made fun of quite a bit over this season. And they look like they might be getting right, or maybe they're just getting right because they're playing the Tigers. They beat the Tigers 2 out of 3 games. Their offense looks as scary. It's about as scary as an offense as I've seen since Tigers played Texas. That's a run scoring machine. And if the Padres are indeed turning it on, I think there might be a little bit of nervousness out there in the NL West. The California invasion continued this week with the arrival of the LA Angels into Detroit, who won the game Tuesday night. Tuesday was actually a really fucked up night. Tried to tune into the game. Big technical difficulties graphic was on the screen, and I could barely hear, but the announcers, the regular TV announcers, were almost inaudibly coming through my speakers. Sounded like they were both sharing like an old flip phone, or maybe a walkie-talkie, and no video for the game. And luckily I could hear enough where they said we had a power outage with all of the television trucks. So the Angels feed was down as well. So it wasn't a power outage in the stadium. It was, they had the pitch clocks working, and I believe most of the scoreboard functioning was there, but there was just no video for the game. So trying to listen to the game and this horrible audio. Eventually they did get a little bit of video. They had like the center field camera came in, and then, there'd be a base hit and they try to like zoom over to where the ball was going. But that was so disorienting and dizzying. They just stopped doing that. So you kind of didn't know what was happening if the announcer didn't tell you exactly where the ball went. Eventually they started adding a few more camera angles so you could kind of understand what was going on. But eventually I lost interest in general, frustrated by the broadcast, but also that the Tigers were down 6-2 in the 9th. To which point they actually led to a furious comeback to actually tie the game in the bottom of the 9th. Just a hilarious play where Torkelson hit a deep ball. It looked like it was out of the ballpark off the bat, but it ended up dropping on the warning track as the Angels center fielder spun around like 3 different times and just let it fall. Unfortunately, of course, the Tigers blew it in the 10th, so the 9th inning comeback was for naught. Last night, the game was suspended due to very inclement weather. We had some bad storms that came through. pretty dicey here in Lansing, but it got really bad in Southeast Michigan. So I wasn't surprised they had to postpone that game to a doubleheader today. And that's where everything got interesting, because after the Angels announced that Ohtani was no longer on the market, and later on that they had traded for Lucas Giolito and Ronaldo Lopez, they also announced that Shohei Ohtani would be pitching today, which he was not supposed to pitch in this series at all. He was going to pitch Friday in Toronto. But he pitched the first leg of the no-hitter, or the doubleheader today. Almost had a no-hitter. He had the one-hit complete game shutout. Just a masterful performance. Second game, he had, like I said, he had the 2 home runs, 3 RBI. I didn't even see what the final score was. Probably 10-4, I think was it. But just a frustrating week, and certainly that series for the Tigers. So undoubtedly they are sellers. I guess that's where we lead to the conversation of who they'll be selling, who I think is going to be going, who might be sticking around. Clearly, Eduardo Rodriguez and Michael Lorenzen are their 2 top pitching commodities to be traded. It's interesting because a couple months ago, Rodriguez would have been probably the biggest commodity on the entire market, as he can opt out of his 5-year deal after this season with the Tigers, and was leading the American League, or amongst the leaders in ERA and everything else, until he had that bizarre pulley rupture in his left index finger. He's come back from that, which was heartening. Yeah, he's been pretty mediocre in his few starts back. Certainly no quality starts, not controlling the zone the way he did previously. So his value is diminished. Although if you look at his season numbers right now, they're still tremendous. He's still got an ERA below 3. But that just shows how good he was before he got hurt. So I haven't read anywhere that he's blaming the injury or anything for the subpar performance so far. He might just need some more time to get back into the swing of things. At least that's what the Tigers are hoping, or they're hoping that their potential trade partners might believe. So I'm a little worried about the value. His value is diminished at a terrible time. On the opposite end of the spectrum is Michael Lorenzen, whose trade value couldn't be any higher than it's been in his entire career. After the All-Star break, at which point he joked self-disparagingly that he was a mid-4, referring to his mid-4 ERA, wondering how he could possibly be an All-Star. He followed his pretty damn good All-Star performance with just fantastic numbers since that point. He's lowered his ERA by a full run. He's now a mid-3 pitcher. He finally gave up his first runs in the first time in 23 innings pitched this afternoon. So he was on a long scoreless streak. He's controlling the zone, and he talked about that in the offseason, how he decided to go to the Tigers because of a past relationship actually with Scott Harris, Tigers GM, back when he was with San Francisco. But more than that, Lorenzen said that he knew the Tigers would make him a better pitcher, and that has happened. And that is a ringing endorsement into what the Tigers have going on with Chris Fetter and the pitching coach and the development system there. So I love that idea is getting out there. It's amongst players. It's not just fans speculating. It's the players are talking about it. And it also gives me hope that the Tigers could trade him at this deadline and re-sign him next year, because I think he has enjoyed his time immensely. This is the best point of his career in Detroit. So he might be coming back next year, even if the Tigers trade him. So
wait, I thought we just talked about if the Cubs traded Cody Bellinger, they probably wouldn't be able to sign him because it sours the player.
Well, you just said he doesn't have Scott Boras as his agent, so it works both ways.
Really? Oh, does it? Okay. Yeah. Whatever's convenient for your discussion at the time.
Well, you don't see any of my logic on either side of this. I mean, every situation is slightly different. It's not one way or the other in every situation that you try to make it be black and white. There are different factors that involve every situation.
But I would agree that it's more difficult to sign the player once you trade him away. It's rarely happened.
Like it's more difficult. I'm not saying it's less difficult. I'm just saying it could happen. So
anything could happen.
Sorry.
Ryan.
Okay. Well, why do we even do a fucking podcast then?
I know, that's what I'm questioning, since that's your logic that it could happen, that anything could happen. So
I'm going to move on then. I think the relievers might be other trade candidates for sure. I've heard Jose Cisnero might go. I would not be sad about that. He's not going to bring back a whole lot. I think similarly, Chasen Shreve might go. That again, I'm not too worried about that. The Tigers have shown that they can trade away from their bullpen and come back the next year with an even stronger bullpen, as we saw last season. They traded away Joel Jimenez and Gregory Soto, and the bullpen's even better this year with the ones they replaced it with. But that was the back end of their bullpen that they traded. You're a little leery to do that this time, as I really would not like the Tigers to trade Jason Foley, their 8th inning guy, who is a master at controlling the strike zone with high velocity and plenty of movement as well. He's really emerged as a shutdown 8th inning guy and has even had a couple saves this year. But Alex Lang is the one that makes me nervous. I think he might get some. Maybe I don't know if he would get more interest on the trade market than Foley would. Lang started out very well. He's got maybe the nastiest pitch in baseball, the knuckle curve, that is just a devastating pitch, but he can't get it over the plate as often as he needs to. And he's been struggling the last few outings, again, at the worst possible time. But I guess I wouldn't be as devastated if they would trade Lang, just because I've seen so much how he doesn't routinely control the strike zone. It's another in a long line of Tigers closers that just drive you crazy. Their stuff is incredible, but they can't throw strikes consistently. We've seen that, all the way back to Papa Grande, Jose Valverde. We've seen it with Fernando Rodney. We saw it with Gregory Soto last year. It's a long line of that. And I'm seeing Alex Lang continue that. And I guess I'd like if they can get more for a closer at this moment. I think Foley could step in as their closer and do an even better job. So again, I'm not sure how much they would get for that. I think maybe Lorenzen would be higher, might get the most on the list right now. It's unfortunate that it would seem like a shoe-in that Eduardo Rodriguez might have been the best trade commodity in all of the market, but that is kind of fallen away. That is all I have for the Tigers, unless you want to derail my arguments and the podcast with your thoughts, but we could just move on to the next.
I don't think I'm derailing anything. I'm just pointing out flaws in your different logic. That's all. But we can move on.
Same logic, but
we can agree on something tonight. Let's move on to the badass candidates.
So badass of the week.
All right. I'll start at the late entry. And by the way, most of this is on. I should. Most of this is all on Smitty. I throw names in sometimes when I have time to do it, but he does most of the work on this. So late entry, one of my favorite names in baseball, Nico Hoerner.
I still don't understand that fucking voice. Why is that voice? Can we bury that voice, please?
7 RBI. 1219 OPS and 4 stolen bases. We're all 4 against the White Sox. I don't know, probably close. Eloy Jiménez, who we were talking about being very consistent, solid numbers guy this year. 1 home run, 4 runs, 6 RBIs, 1161 OPS. 4 of those RBIs were last night. Dansby Swanson.
Yeah, I put him on the list.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I kind of want to talk about each of these. If we could just hold out for a second.
Oh, I apologize. Sorry.
I put Eloy on the list just because his OPS was so impressive. I try to every time. If you've got 1100 OPS, no matter what home runs or RBI or runs numbers you've got, I like to put him on there. But It's funny because I sent you the list and I forgot to put Nico Hoerner on the list originally. And he's probably got the best numbers of all, especially with 1,200 OPS. But the 4 stolen bases in a week is outrageous, something we don't typically see in our badass of the week list.
Yeah, we were talking about that last week. We should, look at stolen bases a little more than we have. We just, we're like chicks. We dig the long ball. Anyway, Dansby Swanson, 3 home runs, 2 in one game against the White Sox, 7 runs, 7 RBIs. It says 1197 OPS, and there's an asterisk.
Yeah, the tricky part of that is I pull the last 7 game stats. That's just the easiest way to do it. That way I don't have to calculate people's OPSs or anything in a certain span. I just go on the list. The issue there is that Swanson just came back from injury. So this is counting his first 4 games back post, I think it's his left heel contusion or whatever he went on the IL with. And it also includes the last 3 games before he got hurt earlier in July. So I don't know. Okay. I wanted to throw that out there because I wanted to see if you would count that against him, that it's over. There's a time in between, or is that even more impressive that he left hot and continued right back just as hot? So I don't know. That's just, I wanted to put the asterisk so you're aware of that. So the numbers, the full context of the numbers.
Yeah, it's probably more impressive that he had the break and didn't skip a beat and came right back.
I was originally thinking it was. Yeah, I was originally thinking it was less impressive, and then the more I thought about it, I think you're right. It's like, well, that's even more impressive. He didn't skip a beat.
But because how many times have we come on here and defended players we liked, saying, "Oh yeah, so and so came back, but he's a little rusty. It's going to take him a little back to get into it." He came back.
That's understandable.
Like, yeah. He came back. He's like, "Fuck you, I'm Dansby fucking Swanson."
Well, that's another reason I think the Cubs might be a different team than you're perceiving them to be.
I will tell you this: he's a reason with the season he's had, and arguably the best shortstop out of that entire class.
Yeah,
defensively, along with his offensive numbers, he's a reason to be like, all right, we just signed you our first year. I didn't hear you make this argument, so I'm going to make it for you. Let's give him some faith that we're in here because he wanted to come to an organization that he thought was going to win. Let's give him some peace of mind that we're close. You know what? Let's just go with what we have and hope that it works out. That way,
so he's not betraying.
He's not soured in his first year there. That hey, I didn't think of this till you just brought it up now. Like till we just started talking about him. But I see that and the Marquee Network being real main reasons why not to move some of the players.
I think appeasing one player. If I tried to make that argument, you would absolutely have destroyed me earlier. But I like that you're making the argument for me. I think that could be a small factor. I think it would be 6th or 7th on the list maybe. But I like the way you're thinking.
For me.
So
it's great, Smitty. Okay. It's fucking great.
That explains a lot.
How about
is that our whole list or is
no? Let's get to the guy I originally said, like, is it even up for debate? But I think it is with Nico Hoerner's
of course.
Numbers. Cody fucking Bellinger continues his campaign of shock and awe over the last 2 weeks. 3 home runs, 3 runs, but this is impressive because I'm maybe Lewis Robert had double-digit RBIs, but he has 11 RBIs over the last week. With a 1047 OPS.
I think Robert did. I think he may have had 12 RBI.
All right. I mean, but this is one of the top, like, you want to talk about production. This is why you have Cody Bellinger. That's why Lewis Roberts on a team. That's why these guys are on the team. They're in for key situations to bring the runner in. It doesn't matter if it goes over the fence or not. You drive in fucking runs. That's what you're supposed to do. And I don't know. I'm between him and Nico Hoerner because what I like about Nico is he does have the highest OPS on the list, and his numbers are very 5-tool-ish.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. I think I had the exact same thought when you sent me that text. I don't know how Bellinger is going to be bested this week. I thought the exact same thing, so I didn't do a whole lot of hard analysis. And then I got deeper into the numbers, and like I said, I almost forgot Nico completely. Then I looked at that; he's got a better OPS by like 200 points this week than Bellinger. Even that's what's kind of amazing about Bellinger. He has 3 home runs, 11 RBI, but he had a 10. What'd you say? 1060?
1047.
1047 OPS. So that's I mean, it's over 1,000 OPS, so it's impressive. But to be bested by almost 200 points by Nico and the 4 stolen bases, I got to give it to Nico right there.
All right, I'll go with Nico. I was on the fence,
All right.
so we were both on the same line. Like it's all Bellinger all the way. Like I literally came into this like, and when you sent the first list, I'm like, yeah, it's fucking Bellinger.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing some homework and sending some other names, but does it really matter, Smitty? Then you said the Nico Hoerner, and I was like, oh shit.
I'm embarrassed that I forgot it on the first list, but
you shouldn't
even brought it up. But all right, well, Nico Hoerner, you are our unanimous badass of the week.
Well,
that leads to but from a badass to our dumbass injury of the week. We haven't done one of these in quite a while. We haven't heard people punching walls or kicking things in this instance, but
or doing the dishes.
Yeah, doing the dishes. We had a lot.
Moving.
Yeah, I feel like we had a lot last year. We haven't. This might be the first one this season. So, but the Mariners, Jared Kelenic, somehow he was frustrated after a 9th inning strikeout against the Twins, in which they lost 6-3. Ended up kicking a water cooler and fracturing his left foot.
Whoops!
He's now on the injured list for 4 to 6 weeks. This coming a week before the trade deadline. They're a just above 500 team now, certainly in the hunt. Really putting a curveball in there, so to speak, into their playoff hopes with just the dumbest injury I can think of. He literally kicked the water cooler. You see players beating shit up in the dugout all the time, but typically they don't break their bones doing it. He, of course, had a tearful apology to his teammates and the fans the next day. It was kind of hard to watch, actually. He was really emotional about it, which is he should be, because he knew he was a dumbass. You and I are not high-profile athletes. We are not athletes at all, actually. But
no,
I'm just wondering if
I was gonna say, I'm like, are we athletes though? I'm exhausted doing this podcast.
My question is, have you even had a frustrating moment where you felt like you needed to kick or punch something to the point where you broke a bone or sprained a thumb? Or have you ever had an incident like that? Because I haven't.
I mean, I think I've punched a wall before, like not a brick wall, like like in college or something, drunk or something. But
yeah,
like
I feel like I've kicked things.
Yeah, I've never when I did play baseball or basketball or things like that, I never, for fear of not being able to play or hurting myself, I've never, for the exact reason that what happened to him, I never like destroyed anything on my way back into the bench or to the dugout or anything like that.
Yeah, but maybe the pressure is not quite to the same level.
No, that's fair.
Stakes aren't as high. So, but I feel like even with outside of sports, I'm sure I know I've had a frustrating moment. I've probably kicked a wall or kicked a door or something, but never to the point where I injured myself. So is it just that these athletes are just so much more powerful than the normal humans, that they have the power to break their own bones in frustration, and we just don't possess that same power? I'm confused by that. So
maybe we're just not quite as angry.
Well, that might be all. We might have a little more stable mental capacity. Of course, we are middle-aged men, so we're using the years of experience and wisdom to not injure ourselves when we are frustrated. But I don't know. I think it was just sad, especially watching Kelenic. Like, apologize and crying in the dugout. It's sad. He knows how dumb he was, but it's just too much. I mean, it's just too perfect to win our dumbass injury of the week.
Yeah, he's on my fantasy teams because of injuries.
Oh no, I didn't even know that.
And he put the fucking exclamation point on top of it at that point. I'm just like, fuck you. I'm just about to get Yordan Alvarez back, and then one of my other major home run hitters fucking kicks a water cooler. Piece of shit.
That's the worst. I mean, I just had Corey Seager go on the IL, but he didn't kick a water cooler to put him there.
Well, you have Shohei Ohtani, so it doesn't matter.
Well, I don't know. He may have hurt his back today. So
I hope so.
That might be going down the drain. Hey, you be nice. Don't wish injuries upon anyone, especially for fantasy purposes.
Oh man. I'd like to announce some breaking news before we get off the air.
What do you got?
I'm finally feeling sober again. So too bad it's at the end of the podcast.
As I say, yeah, we could have saved a lot of consternation.
We could have saved some minutes during the Giants segment.
Yeah. We'll never get those minutes back.
We won't.
Well, with that, I think we can wrap up this episode of In the Hole and Sox Type Thing. You can find us on the web at soxtypething.com and majorleagueaholes.com. You can find us on social media, Pete over there at Sox Type Thing and myself at Major League A-Holes. You can find us on YouTube at Major League A-Holes. You can find our merchandise at aesthetics.shop, ASSTHETICS.shop. I do want to mention before we go that we are going to be off for a couple weeks. When are you coming back from vacation?
August 7th.
Okay, so
we'll be back that week. So we'll skip one episode next week.
Yeah, our post trade deadline reactions will be conspicuously missing, but we'll get to those soon enough. So enjoy your vacation. Typically, it's me that goes on vacation inexplicably during the trade deadline. But this time it's you, so we'll be texting back and forth. Luckily, you're not in the middle of nowhere like I typically am, with no cell coverage or texting ability when major trades are going on. So you and I can at least text our reactions back and forth and start to build the next episode. So
I broke the trend too. We already had a major trade happen, so we've never had that happen either.
Yeah. That's working out great then. Maybe nothing else will happen. We'll have nothing to talk about anyway.
Oh, so God. If nothing else happens for the White Sox, I'll have nothing to talk about when I come back.
Well, hopefully I have something to talk about. And when you do, you can find that podcast anywhere you'd like to find a podcast. So with that, I'm going to declare this podcast is over. Peace.
Peace.
Word Hole Media.